Okay, I'm gonna try my best to kind of summarize on the fly how to play Holy Priest. So first of all, you need Flash Concentration as your legendary. That's like absolutely mandatory, especially for the rest of the things that I'm going to be saying. Um, so in general, with healing in this game, there's a couple things that you want to be aware of. One is that, um, so depending on what heal you're looking at, your heal is going to have, so this is kind of a bit ambiguous because there's a heal called heal. So when you talk about your heal, it's like sometimes you're talking about the actual heal spell, and sometimes you're just talking about heals in general. Anyways, your heals are going to have two stats about them. They're healing per second and they're healing per mana usage. So there's like healing efficiency from a like maximum amount of healing you can do in a certain amount of time, and then also healing efficiency in the terms of like how much healing you do per mana spent. And those are both really, really important. And so they're you need to take both into account. So what I usually do when I'm first learning a new like a new spec for that expansion, or if the patch changed their spec quite a bit, whatever, what I usually do is I look at every single one of my heals, my healing spells that I have, and I look at, like, say for example, I look at how much healing it does. So this does 14,634 healing, how much mana it costs, and how much time it takes. And for an instant cast, I usually just say that's going to take like 1 second, or whatever your global cooldown is. So it might be like 1 second or 1.2 seconds depending on how much haste you have. And then I put this all into a spreadsheet. Yeah, I'm kind of nerdy like that, but I put this all into a spreadsheet and use the spreadsheet to calculate healing per second and healing per mana. And then I look at those stats to actually help me decide what spells I should be using in what circumstances. And then it gets a bit more complex than that, because say for a heal like Prayer of Healing, this can heal 5 people. And so it's going to have different healing per second stats and healing per mana stats based on how many people it's healing. So you might need like Prayer of Healing 1, Prayer of Healing 2, Prayer of Healing, all the way up to Prayer of Healing 5. Same with like Holy Word Sanctify. This can heal 6 people. So you need like Sanct 1, Sanct 2, Sanct 3, Sanct 4, Sanct 5, Sanct 6. And each one of those is going to have its own healing per second and healing per mana. Then based on those stats, you will start to figure out which spells to use in certain circumstances. So what I know off the top of my head is, like, so right now heal 1200 mana, 6000 healing, 2.1 seconds. But if I get all my flash concentration stacks, so you can see beside my cursor I have my flash concentration stacks, and now I have 5. Now if I look at the tooltip, 1.3 seconds, 7000 healing, still 1200 mana. So that's going to affect its healing per second and its healing per mana. And because I'm always going for keeping my flash concentration stacks at 5, that's what I use to calculate heal. And so I know that heal, well, first of all, if we just quickly compare, let me move this over to the side a bit. I want to compare heal with flash heal. I wish I had these on my bars, but there's too much to it on my bars. Flash heal should be in here. Yeah, so flash heal 4200, 1.3 seconds, and 1800 mana. So if I compare that with heal, they both take 1.3 seconds. Heal is 1200 mana, and flash heal is, okay, I have an instant cast, get rid of that, is 1800 mana. So it's like, what is that, 50% more mana cost for the flash heal over the heal. And it does, and they take the same amount of time, and heal does 7000 healing versus flash heal 4200. So heal is just so much better. Like, it takes the same, if you have flash concentration, it takes the same amount of time to cast it. It costs like 50% or well, it depends on which direction you're looking at. It costs like 33% less mana to use, and it does significantly more healing, like almost like 70% more healing or something like that. I don't know off the top of my head. So heal is definitely like amazing when you have flash concentration. Yeah, so heal, basically what I remember from my spreadsheet when I made it early on in this expansion is that heal is my most, so in general, it's my most mana efficient spell and my highest healing per second spell. And so that's why flash concentration is such a good legendary, because it makes like your most mana efficient spell also your most healing per second efficient spell. Now that's not entirely true, because obviously Serenity does 14,000 healing and is an instant cast, versus heal is 7,000 healing, so it does like double healing and kind of like the same amount of time but a little bit less time, because I think my global cooldown is probably a little bit less than 1.3. I'm not quite sure. Either way, this, like, Serenity is obviously more healing efficient from a time standpoint, like healing per second, and it's also like it does double healing and it doesn't quite cost double mana, so it's also the most mana efficient spell. So truly, Serenity is my most healing efficient and my most like healing efficient from mana and from seconds. But it's on a 1 minute cooldown. Now the caveat is that cooldown reduced by 6 seconds when you cast heal or flash, so you can use that in the tooltip. And then I also play with the Light of the Naru talent, which makes it 33% more. So basically, every time I cast heal or flash heal, the cooldown on Serenity is going to be reduced by 8 seconds. So basically, if I were to cast heals and flash heals over the course of 10 seconds, then I would get this Serenity back. So even though it's a minute cooldown, it actually comes out to, like, if you're actually casting like heals and flash heals the whole time, it's going to come out to about 11 or 12 seconds. So I'll just show you that real quick. Like if I put Serenity on cooldown, now I just sit here and spam heals. You can see the cooldown is just getting destroyed by these heal casts, and then pretty soon right here it's off. Now I can cast it, and that was like, I don't even know, that was probably less than 10 seconds before I was able to cast again. So if you're in a state where you can be casting, like people need healing, and so you're constantly casting heals, your Serenity is going to come down off cooldown very, very fast, and that it's super strong. Like, it's an amazing heal. It's an instant cast. It's mana efficient. It's healing per second, super efficient. And if you can have its cooldown, like if you can be using it every 10 to 12 seconds, then that's insane, especially in dungeons where like there's only 5 people to heal. So Serenity is just unbelievable. So heal and Serenity just really, really complement each other. And then obviously flash concentration makes heal so much stronger, makes it so that you can use it more frequently, which again reduces the cooldown of Serenity. So just like this legendary is insane, and it's mandatory. And then also generally you will take Trail of Light, which when you cast heal or flash heal, 35% of the healing is replicated to the previous target you healed with heal or flash heal. So the way that you want to utilize this is when you have multiple people to heal, don't top somebody off, or try not to. Like, heal one of them and then jump to the next person and heal them, because if you don't top that first person off, some of that next heal is going to be replicated on them. So if you top people off, then your Trail of Light is just going to be doing overhealing. Whereas if you like heal them once and then they're still missing maybe like 10% of their health, then the next person you heal, some of that heal is going to hit them, and it's going to be really useful. Another way you can use that to your advantage, say you have 3 people to heal, and one of them is the tank. So the tank is going to be taking continuous damage. The other people that are getting healed, they might not be taking continuous damage. They might have just like taken some damage, and now they're not going to be taking damage again for a little bit. So what you want to do, you want to make sure that the last person you healed is the tank. So if the last person you healed was not the tank, then quickly cast heal on the tank to make sure that they're now your Trail of Light target. Then heal one of the people that needs healing. Then heal the tank again. So let me back that up. So you heal the tank first to make sure your Trail of Light is on the tank. Let me move this over so they're all there for illustrative purposes. Come on, let me grab you. There we go. Oh my god, I didn't move it over enough. Ugh. So heal the tank first so that the Trail of Light's on them. Then heal one of the DPS. And now because you're healing the DPS and the Trail of Light's on the tank, then some of that healing is going to be replicated on the tank, which is probably, the reason for that is it's probably going to be useful because the tank's probably taking continuous damage. So even if you top them off with your first heal, by the time you're doing this next heal, they might have taken some damage. So then that replication heal is going to hit the tank, and it's probably going to be useful. Then you want to heal the tank again, assuming they're missing health, because you want that Trail of Light on the tank all the time in general. And then you go heal the third person that needs healing, and that way every single time you cast on one of these DPS, the Trail of Light heal was hitting the tank. It's probably getting use out of it. Now that's not super important. Say that when your first heal that didn't top them off, well I guess yeah, so the first heal, even if that didn't top them off, when you cast the next heal on the tank to get the Trail of Light back on them, when you cast that heal, that's actually going to replicate on that first DPS you chose. Anyways, that's just sort of like a bit of an optimization of how to utilize Trail of Light really well. You can set up certain like weak auras, or with Voodoo you can set up a tracker to track your Trail of Light and actually see where it goes, and that can be useful just for learning how to use Trail of Light. So I did that for a bit, just so that I could get used to how Trail of Light worked, and then once I kind of got used to it, then I removed it so that it's not as distracting. Because now I just kind of know how to use it properly, and it's basically just try not to top people off, because the next time you heal somebody else, then you'll probably top them off. And also that little tip about like bouncing back and forth between the tanks, so that the tank is always your Trail of Light target, is quite helpful. All right, so back to like choosing which spells to cast. So like I mentioned, the important things is healing per second and healing per mana. So and this is like no matter what healer you are, you can be a shaman healer, you can be a paladin healer, whatever. Like that's what you want to look at. Is you want to find out for every single one of your healing spells, you want to find out its healing per second and its healing per mana. And some of them might be different. You know, like you might have certain, like I mentioned, some heals will hit multiple people, so you'll need to have a calculation for each scenario where, like, depending on how many people you're hitting. And some heals as well will have different like types of procs that can affect them, and so then you'll have to do a calculation based on that as well. Even like Prayer of Mending. So Prayer of Mending, places a ward on an ally that heals them for 1200 the next time they take damage, and then jumps to another ally within 20 yards, jumps up to 5 times. And so if Prayer of Mending is getting full use out of it, then it's going to heal 5 times. So it's going to heal 5 times at 1200 per. So that comes out to about 6,000 healing for 1,000 mana. So it's pretty comparable to heal. But the reason it's so useful is because you can cast it when there's not much healing that needs to be done, and then it'll get its use later on. So so Palm is definitely, like, you want to be using that pretty much on cooldown, as long as people don't need direct healing instantly. If they need, like, if you're healing people, I'll go over that later actually. I won't bring that up now. So what I was meaning to get at is that, so yeah, this can do 6,000 healing over its existence, but there's a chance that it will actually fall off. So you might only get like 2 bounces out of it or 3 bounces out of it. So it's useful to know those kinds of things. Yeah, basically what I'm getting at is that it's not always as straightforward as I'm saying, where like a certain heal cast will have a healing per second value and a healing per mana value. That's not necessarily static. Those aren't necessarily static values. So you might need to be aware of like the different scenarios that you could be in, or the different procs that you could have that will affect those values, and then take those into account as well. Anyways, yeah, so for Prayer of Healing, for example, maybe you do those calculations for POH1, POH2, POH3 up to POH5, and maybe you realize that at POH4 it actually becomes more mana efficient or more healing per second efficient than heal. And then you can use that. Then you know, like, oh, if you're in a group and there's 4 people that are missing health, instead of casting your heal, it's actually better to cast your Prayer of Healing. I don't think that's actually the case. I think Prayer of Healing is pretty garbage. It might be good at like 5 people, and even then I'm not entirely sure. The other thing to be aware of is obviously, like, for so Serenity, its cooldown is reduced whenever you cast Heal or Flash Heal, but Sanctify, its cooldown is reduced whenever you cast Prayer of Healing or Renew. So that might be useful. So like more in raids, Prayer of Healing might be more useful than it is in dungeons, just because you have more potential to hit 5 people with it. And the other thing is that you're reducing Sanctify, which is a lot more useful in raids than it is in dungeons. Then like Circle of Healing, for example. So this is an instant cast, 13-second cooldown. Heals up to 5 people for 2,000 each. So that's 10,000 healing. That's like 10.5 thousand healing. And it's an instant cast, and it costs 1,600 mana. So it's actually more, if you're hitting 5 people, it's more healing efficient from healing per second and for healing per mana than heal is. And you would want to do Circle of Healing for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, do the calculation for each of them. And I think that at 3 people, let's see. So at 3 people, you're going to be doing about 6,300 healing, or I guess 6,600 healing. And it's an instant cast, so you're going to get... Let's get my Flash Concentration stacks up. So let's say 3 people for a Circle of Healing is going to be 6,600 healing versus healed 7,000 healing. So heal still does more healing than 3 people of Circle of Healing. It's an instant cast, but with 1.3 seconds. If you can plant, 1.3 is pretty close to global cooldown. So yeah, they're pretty comparable. And then heal is obviously cheaper from a mana standpoint. So Circle of Healing, I would say at 3 people, if it's going to hit 3 people, it's comparable to heal. And then obviously if you need to move, then it's great, because then you can like move while using it, or like as soon as you cast it, you can take a sidestep or whatever. So 3 people is where is in general the way I play is if 3 people are gonna need healing, then I'll use Circle of Healing over heal, and just to get it on cooldown, and then definitely at 4 people, then it becomes like definitely worthwhile from both a healing per second and a healing per mana. So 4 or 5 people always use Circle of Healing on cooldown. 3 people probably use it. 2 people use it if you have to be moving, because then you don't have much of a choice of what else to cast. Yeah, so that's basically kind of the gist of how I actually make these decisions. Is I make these spreadsheets, I do these calculations, I figure out, okay, Circle of Healing is worth casting at 3 people, and Prayer of Healing is worth casting, say, at like 4 or 5 people, something like that. And that way, when I'm in a dungeon, I can have a better gauge of which spell I should cast based on how much damage people are taking and like how many people are missing health, stuff like that. And then also, like, you want to do that calculation for Sanctify as well, obviously. So Sank, each person that Sank hits is going to get 5,000 healing, which is quite a bit. So if you can even hit 2 people, that's going to do more healing than a heal cast would do. That being said, it's almost like it's just over double mana cost. So if mana is an issue at the time, then Sank would not be worth at 2 people. But if mana is not an issue, then Sank would be worth at 2 people. And then obviously if you get into like hitting 3 or 4 people with Sank, then it becomes very much worth it. That being said, for dungeons, you want to be aware of like Sank is a 1 minute cooldown, and you're not casting Prayer of Healing ever. You're rarely ever hard casting Renew. So you're not going to get many Sanks throughout the dungeon. Like the cooldown's not going to come off cooldown that much. It's going to take about a minute. So you might want to, like, even though 2 people might need healing, it's probably not worth casting a Sank on them. It's probably worth like using Serenity if it's off cooldown. I always mess up the off and on cooldown, so if I stumble on it, that's why my brain is like having a stroke. Yeah, so Sank would be worth using if it's going to hit 2 people, but it might be better to save it, because maybe within the next minute, while it would be on cooldown, you'll have an opportunity to hit like 3 or 4 people with it, and then it's like, oh, I wish I would have had it now. I wish I would have just used heals to heal up those 2 people, and then when like 4 people needed healing, then I could hit them with Sank. And the other thing to be aware of with Sank is that it doesn't have a big area. So in a dungeon, especially where you only have 5 people in the dungeon, and then like you're a ranged healer, you might not be stacked with the group, and you might have like ranged DPS, so they might not be stacked with the group. So your opportunity to get like good usage out of Sank is limited in dungeons, is basically what I'm getting at. Now, figuring out all of that, doing all those calculations, figuring out when it's worthwhile to use certain heals, that's really important, and that'll help you just make judgment calls on the fly, which is important as a healer. But I've done those calculations. I've played the game a decent amount, this expansion, on a Holy Priest, so I have a good feel of when to use certain spells. Obviously, I'm not the greatest Holy Priest ever, far from it, so some of the stuff that I say or some of the stuff that I've decided may not be correct, but it's serving me well, so I'll tell you how I do it. So basically the way that I play is I try to make sure Palm is on cooldown all the time. That being said, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to use Palm during a period of high damage, because people need the healing now, and Palm is more like, oh, they're going to get healing over the next 30 seconds or over the next 20 seconds or whatever. So if people are close to dying and they need healing, then it would be better to use some of your other heals over Palm. But other than that, if you have the opportunity, if people don't need healing now to survive, then make sure Palm is on cooldown. And then Circle of Healing, if 3 or more people are missing health, then Circle of Healing is useful. Again, it only does 2,000 healing per person. So if, like, yeah, you might have 3 people or 4 people missing health, but one of them is really missing health, one of them's at like 20% health, and you really need to heal them fast, then Circle of Healing might not be the best thing to use there, because that one person needs to be a bit more prioritized. But in general, if multiple people are missing health, 3 or more people are missing health, and Circle of Healing is off cooldown, then that's probably a good time to use Circle of Healing. Get it on cooldown. Next, Serenity. So like I mentioned, this is, even though it's a minute cooldown, this is going to be coming off cooldown a lot if you have the flash concentration legendary, just because you're going to be casting a lot of heals, and even flash heals just to keep your flash concentration stacks going. And so this is going to come off cooldown fast. I would say that during your normal healing, like rotation, if you want to call it a rotation or a priority system or whatever, during your normal healing, assuming you're actually healing during that time, and not like dealing damage or moving and stuff like that, you're going to get a Serenity about every 12 seconds. Anyways, so Serenity, a couple things to notice with Serenity is it's obviously our highest heal from how much damage it heals at once. It's an instant cast, which is amazing. And its cooldown isn't that long. Like I mentioned, like under normal circumstances, the cooldown might be like somewhere between 10 and 15 seconds. So it's really not that long, but you don't want to totally waste it. Like you don't want to use it on damage that's not that important to heal fast, and then within the next 8 seconds maybe some like major damage comes out and you're like, oh damn, I really need a Serenity now to save this guy's life. Like I need a fast heal that's big, or this guy dies but it's on cooldown for the next 7 seconds or even like 4 seconds, and so you don't have it. So you don't want to totally waste it, but you also don't want to like save it too much and let it sit off cooldown for too long and not get usage out of it. So you'll just get a feel for that as you play more and more. But in general, Serenity is good to use when there's not going to be overhealing. So like it's 15,000 healing, and then you might even, based on like some procs that you have, it might do a bit more healing. And obviously this is based on my stats. So if you're like lower geared than I am, then your healing values are going to be a bit different. But what I'm getting at here is that in general, if someone's missing enough health for Serenity to make sense, feel free to use Serenity to heal them. It's going to be mana efficient. It's going to be time efficient. They're going to feel safe because they might be at like 60% health and they instantly go up to 100% health or like close to 100% health. They're going to have like more trust in you. They're going to be feeling safe. They're going to be like, damn, our healer's good. He's healing me up quick. So Serenity's good for that. And then as you want to be a bit of a better healer, then you want to start asking the question of like, yeah, I could get good Serenity usage right now, but I could also, like, people will survive if I'm just casting heal, and then maybe in the next 5 seconds someone's going to take like a big chunk out of their health, and then a Serenity would be nice. So keep that in mind going forward. But to start with, just use it anytime you're going to not be overhealing with it. So yeah, that's Palm on cooldown, without those caveats that I mentioned. Circle of Healing on cooldown, again without the caveats that I mentioned. Serenity on cooldown as long as it's going to be useful, like as long as someone's missing enough health that it's not going to be a lot of overhealing. And then from there, it's pretty much just heal spams. So I'll just like get my flash concentration stacks up. Make sure you're casting a flash heal every time that your flash concentration stacks are going to fall off soon. So yeah, so basically like Palm, and then say enough people are missing health, then I will Circle of Healing, and now I'll just be spamming heals. And then say someone is missing enough health where Serenity makes sense, then I'll pop Serenity, and then back to casting heal. Now my Palm just came off cooldown, I'll cast Palm. My flash concentration stacks are about to fall off, so I cast flash heal, and then go back. And now Circle of Healing's off cooldown, but say like not enough people are missing health, so I'm not going to use it. And then Palm again, and then just like heal spams. And again, you see that my Serenity has been off cooldown for a bit, but maybe like nobody needs a Serenity heal, and now someone needs a Serenity heal, so I hit them, and then Palm. So that's basically like this very, very strong majority of my heal casts, or my healing casts, are obviously Heal is my #1 use spell, and then Serenity I use a lot, Palm I use a lot, Circle of Healing I use a decent amount. So if we just look at my healing for the last dungeon that I did, which was Halls of Atonement 15. So I cast 320 heals. So that's like very, very strong majority of my healing casts were heal, and also the strong majority of my like actual healing was with heal. This is just my mastery. Serenity I cast 32 times. Flash heal I cast 111, but this is just to keep my flash concentration stacks alive, and also to burn any of my like instant cast procs, which I'll talk about next. Palm I cast 92 times. Sorry. Renew I cast once, but I still had like a decent amount of renew heal because of Benediction. So your Prayer of Mending has a 25% chance to leave Renew on each target that heals. And then Circle of Healing, I only cast 7 times, so not too many Circle of Healings. And I don't even think I cast... Oh, I cast 1 Sanctify. And it looks like it hit 2 people because it did 11,000 healing. Yeah, so very, very strong majority of my healing is just from heal casts. And then Flash Heal just to keep my Flash Concentration stacks alive. Serenity pretty much every time that I can get use out of it. So you'll see that I only did 11.6% overhealing with it, which is pretty good. Same with Heal. 21% over heal, so that's actually quite a bit more than I usually get. I was probably just spamming heals to keep people like safe, but generally I'll probably only get about like 12% overhealing with heal. I'm usually pretty good at not overhealing too much with it. Your mastery, you're just going to get a lot of overhealing with it. There's not much you can control about that. Trail of Light, again, you're also going to get a decent amount of overhealing with that. You could there's ways you could do better to not have as much overhealing with both of these, and that's just like making sure people don't get completely topped off. Like if they're missing 20% of their health and you cast a heal and maybe it gets them up to like 96%, then don't worry about that. Let the echo, let your mastery heal them up, or let like the next cast you do on them heal them up. But that's sort of just when it makes sense to do those things, but it's not that important. And then Flash Heal, quite a bit of overhealing, but that's because I'm using it mostly just to keep my Flash Concentration stacks alive. So I might, like, nobody needs a heal, but my Flash Concentration stacks are falling off in 2 seconds, so I just heal myself, or Flash Heal myself, just to get the stacks going. And then Palm, just use that on cooldown as much as possible to get a bunch of healing out of it. But definitely, like, you can just see here that heal is going to be your main spell, and it's fast and it's efficient from a mana perspective and from a healing per second perspective. Some other things to talk about with respect to Holy Priests. One is Surge of Light. So your healing spells and Smite have an 8% chance to make your next Flash Heal instant and cost no mana and stacks to 2. So when you're just doing normal healing, it's only 8% chance, right? It's hard to get like to convince it to just proc for you on demand when you're testing things or just trying to show it off. I'll try to get one. See, like, I'm casting heal after heal after heal, and I'm not getting any of these procs. Cast a Flash Heal to keep my concentration stacks going. Proc for me, please. This is some great RNG right now. Well, anyways, if I were to get one of these procs, it would show up as a little aura icon here. And then if I got a because it says it stacks up to 2 times. If I got a second one, it would show up as another one right here. And so again, your healing spells and Smite have an 8% chance to make your next Flash Heal instant and cost no mana. So that's just your Flash Heal. So the way to use these Surge of Light procs is just to be a free use of your Flash Heal for refreshing your Flash Concentration stacks. So when you're healing, you need to always make sure that your Flash Concentration stacks do not fall off whenever possible. So you're doing normal heals, like just your normal healing priority and rotation and whatnot. Putting out palms and stuff like that. Okay, so here's one of those procs. You can see it. And then, even though I have one of these procs, it's an instant cast and it's free. I'm not going to use it right away. I'm going to wait until my timer gets lower. And so, like, right around here is where I'll use it. And I was lucky that my last heal before I cast my Flash Heal also gave me a proc. It showed up right here just briefly. And so when I used Flash Heal, it used that one, so I still have that initial one. So again, like, even though I have one, I'm not going to use it right away. I'm just going to do my normal healing. And then, okay, so now if you get 2, then it's fine to just use it right away. It's fine to use a second proc immediately, because if you don't and then you keep healing, you might proc something, but you already have 2 stacks, so you can't get another proc, so you're wasting it. So it's better just to use it right away when it shows up. That being said, try not to use it right away if it's just going to be pure overhealing. Like, try to hang on to it until someone's actually missing health, so you get a bit more use out of that that free Flash Heal. Some other things to be aware of. So these are my talents that I use. I don't know if I went over these at the very beginning, but some things that you'll see differently from like high level priests is they'll often use Divine Star instead of Benediction, and this is just it's mostly for the purpose of increasing their damage output throughout a dungeon, which is important in Mythic Plus, is obviously to speed it up. So ideally you would be taking Divine Star and using that basically on cooldown for both its healing and its damage, but mostly for its damage purposes, especially in like AoE groups. But if you're just kind of getting used to things, it's better to take passive talents so that you don't have as many use abilities to worry about. And then the other one is Apotheosis. Most high level priests will take Apotheosis over Light of the Naru. I really like Light of the Naru. I love how often I get Serenity back. You still get Serenity back fast without Light of the Naru, but this just makes it even better. Apotheosis will be your ideal choice. If you feel like you're going to get good use out of it, then take it and just try to get good use out of it. If not, then take Light of the Naru. Salve is good if you're doing raids. Certain raid bosses, it's really good to have Salve for. But for the most part, even in raids, I would take Light of the Naru. And then for certain fights where we do need an extra external, then I'll take Salve. The other one is, so for dungeons, you want to take Guardian Angel as this talent. For raids, you want to take Cosmic Cripple. But for dungeons, Guardian Angel is really good. So if we just look at what Guardian Spirit does, where is it? Right here. So calls upon a Guardian Spirit to watch over the friendly target for 12 seconds, increasing healing received by 82% and preventing the target from dying by sacrificing itself. The sacrifice terminates the effect and heals the target for 40% of maximum health. Castable while stunned. That's interesting. I didn't realize it was castable while stunned. Massive damage amounts will kill the target despite this effect. Okay, I was not aware of that. That's interesting. Okay, so it says it lasts 12 seconds and it increases healing received by 82%. This is actually because of a conduit that I have. This conduit, Guardian Spirit's duration is increased by 2 seconds and it increases healing received by an additional 22%. So without this conduit, Guardian Spirit would be 10 seconds and would only increase healing by 60%. Still really good, but that conduit's nice. Now, you'll notice that the cooldown is 3 minutes, but with this talent, when Guardian Spirit expires without saving the target from death, it reduces its remaining cooldown to 6 seconds. So if you use Guardian Spirit on someone and they don't end up dying, so it doesn't need to like sacrifice itself to save their life, then its cooldown is going to go from 3 minutes to 1 minute, which is great because of that 82% increased healing. So you want to, I mean, yes, if someone's going to die and you can save them with Guardian Spirit, that's amazing, and then that'll be worth the 3 minute cooldown that it goes with. But if you can see that happening a little bit quicker and use Guardian Spirit mostly for its increased healing benefit, then you're probably going to be able to save this person's life just based on your heals. Like if your heals are doing almost double healing for 12 seconds, then you should be able to keep them alive. And then its cooldown will reduce to a minute, and a minute cooldown is like almost once every pull. At higher keys, like most pulls are going to take at least a minute, maybe longer, and so you could get good, really good use throughout a dungeon with Guardian Spirit with this talent. Different ways to use Guardian Spirit is obviously like if someone's getting really close to dying, you could pop it on them to try to save their life. And then when you do pop it on someone, you have the decision. When it's on someone, the way you can use that is you can say, okay, that person's going to be saved by Guardian Spirit if they die, so I don't need to focus on them as much. So say there's like lots of damage going out in the raid and there's a couple people who are low health, then you can pop Guardian Spirit on one of them and then focus on the others. Because if that person who has GS on them does die, they'll be healed for 40% of their maximum health and they'll be okay. So it can give you that opportunity to focus your heals elsewhere. Another way you can use it is to pop it on someone and then heal that someone specifically to benefit from the 82% increased healing. So that's really good, say, on a tank. If a tank is taking really heavy damage or is at like 40% health or something, you pop GS on them and then start healing them a bit, and like it's only going to take a couple heals with that benefit. Like imagine you Guardian Spirit and then you pop a Serenity on them. That's going to be like a 27,000 heal or something like that. Like that's a ton. And then maybe one more heal, and that's going to be like a 12,000 heal or 13,000 heal. So just 2 casts with once Guardian Spirits on them is going to get them topped off. On top of that, especially when you use GS on a tank, a lot of tanks have self-healing. So like a Paladin with their Word of Glory, or a Demon Hunter with their little orb things, or a Druid with its like frenzied regen. So if you do GS a tank, there's a good chance that they're going to be doing some self-healing. That's going to benefit from that bonus as well, because this 82% healing increase isn't just your own heals, it's like anybody's heals. So say if you're healing a Paladin tank and they're kind of low and you pop GS on them and then they use a Word of Glory on themselves, that Word of Glory might like heal them to entirely full. I have a paladin friend that I heal sometimes, and or a paladin tank friend that I heal sometimes. And sometimes I get confused because he's really low and I pop GS on him, and then he gets to instantly full health, and I'm always like, oh, did he waste his lay on hands? Because I'm like, oh damn, like I wish he didn't use his lay on hands. I used my guardian spirit, he would have been fine. But then I realized he doesn't have the lay on hands debuff that's left over after using lay on hands, so he must have just Word of Gloried, and his Word of Glory, like even maybe without a crit, just healed him for basically what a lay on hands would have healed him for, which is insane. So just like 1 GS at 10% health on a paladin tank can turn their Word of Glory basically into a lay on hands, which is insane. So yeah, Guardian Spirit's really, really strong, and you want to use this talent, and you want to try to get good use out of this talent by ideally not having the person die while Guardian Spirit's active. But of course, if they do die, then that's fine. Take that 3 mana cooldown. You save the person's life. That's good. Other talents, yeah, these are basically all the basic talents. So Angelic Feather. Angelic Feather is, I'll show you my macro for it. It's really good to have this macroed. So Nomad at cursor, Angelic Feather. So then I can like just do anywhere, and so it's bound to E. So if I just mouse over anywhere and I just press E, then it puts a feather there. And what's nice is if I mouse over a player, and also it works for my voodoo bar. So if I want to give a specific player a movement speed buff, I can just press E on them on my bars, or I can, like, as they're moving around, I can press E on them. Okay, I kind of missed him there, but if you're mousing over them, I missed both times. But if you're mousing, oh, actually, maybe he just can't get it because maybe he's an Alliance player. What is he? Night Elf, yeah. So that's, I guess that's why I wasn't healing him. But with this macro, it goes to your cursor first, and then if I'm holding shift, then it's to player, which is myself. So if I'm running around, I don't have to worry about where my cursor is. I can just hold shift and press E, and it uses a feather on myself all the time. So I just basically, I know that shift E is to give myself a movement speed boost, and priests especially need movement speed boost. We don't move very fast. So good talent to have and good macro to have for it. So if you want that macro, just rewind the video and just copy it. It's not that much text, so I won't put it somewhere where you can just like copy and paste. You can just copy the text from the video itself. Trail of Light I've already talked about. Surge of Light I've talked about. So just try to save these procs to just use as your flash concentration refreshers. Obviously, if there's a lot of damage going out and you just need a bit more healing, then an instant cast flash heal could be worth using in that moment. So even if your flash concentration has like 14 seconds on it left, if there's a lot of healing going out, don't be afraid to just use that proc to increase your healing per second, because it is an instant cast. Also, if you're moving and you need to heal, then using that proc can also make sense. And then Benediction is nice because then your palms just turn into renews every once in a while. Divine Star, again, like I mentioned, is probably the more ideal choice for dungeons. Halo I would not recommend for dungeons because you will often accidentally pull. Like, it's 30-yard radius, and if I take it and use it, put it somewhere on my bars that I can use it, I don't have like any bars left to use. This is annoying. Where do I put it? Put it there, I guess. So if I pop this, it does this like heal thing. I thought it, what? That's not how I remember Halo working. Oh, maybe they changed it. I obviously haven't used it in Shadowlands at all. I thought it used to like throw out this circle around you, and it would go outwards, and then it would hit its max range, and then come back in and heal a second time. I guess it doesn't do that anymore. But either way, it well, first of all, it's a cast, so you can't use it instantly, which is kind of annoying. Divine Star is an instant cast. And then you'll accidentally pull things. Like, it's everything within 30 yards of you. So if there is a pull that you haven't pulled, it's like sitting over here, you might accidentally pull it. So I would not recommend using it in dungeons. Divine Star will be the better choice. Now I need to make sure I put my leap of faith. What else to know about priests? So we'll just quickly go through. So fade, I have a macro, so you'll see that my 1 here is actually purify. That's just for it's actually a macro that is my smite. It just shows the purify cooldown. Um, because smite obviously does not have a cooldown, so there's no reason to show it on my bars, and so I have purify sitting up here just as the cooldown, but it's actually going to cast smite. But like you see here, it casts fade first, so fade is not on the global cooldown, and it's a 30-second cooldown, so I just have it every time that I cast smite. If fade is off cooldown, then it'll cast fade first, and that's just to reduce my overall threat. That's you can make those macros for like any cast that you do, so like even just your heal cast, you can macro fade to go first. And then that will help you reduce your overall threat during fights. I should probably do that actually. There's also a particular conduit that you can use that I think it's maybe here. For the first 5 seconds of fade, you take 8.4% reduced damage. So if you have this conduit, one thing you could do is just continue to do what I was saying, where you just have basically all your spells macro to use fade on cooldown, and that way out of every 30 seconds you're going to have fade active, or you're going to have this conduit active for 5 of the seconds. So what is that? It's 1/6 of the time, so like about 16% of the fight you will have fade active, so you'll have this damage reduction for 16% of the fight, which is nice. Or you could use it more directly, where you actually have fade bound to something, and then when you know you're going to take damage, you can pop fade to get this damage reduction. I don't use this talent. Or this conduit, sorry. I do see a lot of high-level priests using it, though. It's probably quite useful. Dispel magic, so that's your offensive dispel. So anytime that someone that you're targeting has something that you can dispel, so I have a weak aura set up for that. Dispel enemy target. And so that basically, sorry for the Steam noises, someone's spamming me on Steam. Anytime that I'm targeting someone and they have a so the trigger is an aura target buff, and it is stealable. So anytime that I am targeting something that has a magic effect that I can dispel, then this icon will show up, which is really helpful, because then I know exactly like when to use my dispel magic. That's really strong ability that you should be aware of and that you should be trying to use. And DBM will often announce to you when there's something that needs to be dispelled in a fight or in a dungeon or whatever. So looking at DBM's output and then getting to know those pulls, so that if you see it in one particular pull, next time you do that dungeon, be aware that there's probably going to be something that you need to dispel, and get to know which targets those are, and then you can like already be targeting them, so then as soon as the thing shows up, you can just like instantly dispel it. Leap of Faith, really strong ability that just like pulls someone towards you. So I'll use this for a couple things. One thing is like sometimes people will get hit by knockbacks, and they might get knocked back like off the edge of something, off the edge of a platform, and then they'll die. So if you can see that happening, if you see that they got knocked back, you can try to Leap of Faith them. I've saved a couple people like that, and it's one of the most exciting, like most satisfying things you can do as a Holy Priest, is save someone from getting knocked off the edge. So the way I use that is I have a macro for that. Where is it? Might be this. Yeah, so for my F button, that's my Dispel Magic. No mod, Dispel Magic, and then cast target is equal to mouse over, help exists, and mod shift. So basically if I'm holding shift and my target, my mouse over target is a friendly, that's what this help means, then it'll cast Leap of Faith on them. So that's useful for both like if you needed to pull someone like on your screen, you can mouse over them and then hold shift F and it'll grip them in. Or I can use it with my healing bars here, because these work with mouse over macros as well. And that brings me to the next main use of Leap of Faith, and that's pulling the tank away from damage. So say the tank is getting really low, and that's why I like to stay away from the group when the group is fighting. I try to stay a little bit further back. That way, if the tank's over here and he's getting low, I can just hold shift F on his bar here, and it'll yank him to me. And during this time, he won't be taking damage. And ideally the group will have some slows going, like if you have a frost mage or something like that, and the tank will be able to use that as an opportunity to kite away. That's really helpful for like obviously if the tank is just taking lots of damage, you can pull them away to buy yourself a little time to heal them up. or if they're getting a bunch of a dot on them, like especially during a necrotic week, or in HOA, there's these bears that leave this dot or this bleed, and so if they get too many stacks of that bleed, you can yank them away from the bears, give them a chance to kite away and let their stacks fall off. Same with like necrotic. So Leap of Faith is really, really strong if used properly. Mass Dispel. So Mass Dispel can be used offensively or defensively. Obviously your Purify is your main dispel, and that only removes magic and disease. Mass Dispel only removes magic. But Purify has an 8-second cooldown. So say you dispel somebody, and then there's someone else that needs a dispel, and it's actually like kind of a priority dispel. Like it's a dot that you really, really want to dispel, or it's like a root or something, and you want to get off it. Then you can use Mass Dispel for that. Another thing is like sometimes a group-wide harmful magic thing will go in the group. For that, you would want to Mass Dispel, so that I have bound to my button 5 on my mouse, and so then I would just use this pretty big radius. Like it's bigger than Sanks. This is Sanks, and this is Mass Dispel. So Mass Dispel is just a amount bigger. So like in Mists of Tyrna Scythe, for example, some of the maze pulls will do a mass entanglement, and you'll all get rooted, and that root, it roots you, but it also is dealing, it's a dot as well. So as soon as that happens, if you can get a Mass Dispel out on as many people as you can, you might only hit like 4 of the people in your group, but even if you hit 4 people in the group, then you can use your Purify on the last person. That way it gets them all out of the root, and it saves you from having to heal all that extra damage that's going out. So Mass Dispel is really strong when you get to know when to use it properly. Mind Control is garbage this expansion. I remember in Legion, there was like a particular talent maybe that you could make it so that Mind Control, you could Mind Control something and it would just become your pet. So you could keep playing, but this thing would be your pet temporarily. So that was really strong for dungeons. But now if you Mind Control something, then like you actually have to play as that something, so you can't heal while you're Mind Controlling them. So Mind Control is pretty useless. Mind Soothe is good for skipping packs, so there's certain packs where if you Mind Soothe them, then you can walk by them without pulling them, so be aware of that. So I have Mind Soothe bound to shift 1, so there's certain pulls that I know of that like we can skip them if I Mind Soothe one of them. Power Infusion. Power Infusion is kind of like a mini Lust on a 2-minute cooldown, and sometimes you'll use it on yourself, but for the most part you want to be using it on your top damage dealer. And it's only a 2-minute cooldown, so try to use this on cooldown as much as possible. I don't do a great job of it, but try to use it on cooldown. So basically every pull, at the start of the pull, if Power Infusion is up, as soon as the pull is made, Power Infusion one of your DPS, whoever's going to be doing the most damage during that fight, is usually the play to make. And then if it comes back off cooldown mid-fight, if there's still going to be 20 seconds in the fight, then it's worth using. But if the fight's going to be done within 15 seconds, then maybe save it for the start of the next pull. The other thing you can do with Power Infusion is you can, if you coordinate a bit better, like say you're in Discord with somebody, like a really good DPS, then you can tell them to ask for PI. That way they can line up their own cooldowns with your PI. That's ideal. But if it's not going to be as coordinated, then just use it on cooldown, and they'll get good use out of it. Fort, make sure that people are forted. So with my voodoo bars, I have it set up. I'll show you the options, buffs. So I have it checked here, and what that means is that it's gonna change the bar color. So you can see I'm green right now. Everybody's health bars will be green, but if someone's missing my powered fortitude, then it will go white, and that happens in combat as well. So like say somebody gets battle rezzed, or someone's fort just falls off for whatever reason mid-fight, then I'll notice it. Their bar will go white. Mid-fight, I will try to fortitude them, but it does cost 2,000 mana. So if it's a fight where my mana is maybe in question, then I might not fort them. Might not be worth the mana. That being said, if it's like a tank, like say you had to battle res the tank, then I probably want to get fort on them because that does increase their health by a decent amount. Power Word Shield, you're probably not going to be using this much as a Holy Priest. You could technically use it at the start of pulls, like you could Power Word Shield your tank as he's going in to make the pull, and then that'll just absorb some damage at the start of the pull. That's fine, but it's like 1,500 mana for 3,000 healing is not much at all. Like if you compare that with heal, remember our heal with our full fast concentration was like 7,000 healing for 1,200 mana, so you're getting half the healing for a little bit more mana. So not super worth it, and it's also not going to absorb much damage, but if you want to be using that, you can. So for me, I think it's like shift right click, and it puts Power Word Shield on them. Also, if instead of Feather, you can take Body and Soul, and that makes Power Word Shield and Leap of Faith increases the target's movement speed by 40% for 3 seconds. So that's actually, like, if you're just looking at this row as pure how much speed you can generate, you're gonna get better use out of this talent and then just spamming Power Word Shield, especially because then you can like be spamming it on your whole team. So when you do Power Word Shield, it leaves this Weaken Soul debuff for 6 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever it is, where they can't be Power Word Shielded again. But if you have a full group of people and you're all moving somewhere, you could like be rotating Power Word Shield on all of them and giving them all that 3 seconds of 40% movement speed. But in general, I like Feather better. Psychic Scream, so this is our AoE CC, so you can fear AoE, so it's like you have to be in melee range of them, and then you fear everything. Well, it's not everything, I think it's 5 enemies, yeah. But it is not really great because it sends them fearing in all sorts of directions, and so it kind of breaks, like you might have a pull where you have all of the mobs together, and so AoEing them is easy for the DPS, but then you go and fear them, and then they run off all in all sorts of directions, so it's not ideal. But it can be used for like say you have aggro and you don't have the, like, ideally when you get aggro as a healer, you want to try to bring it to the tank. If it's just one thing, then the tank should ideally see it and then just taunt it, but you can make their job a lot easier by running it to them, especially if you have more than one thing on you, because then they can't taunt more than one thing at a time. So if you have like multiple things on you, try to run it to the tank. That being said, if they're hurting you really badly, or you're far from the tank or something, or you just really need to be healing, then it would be better just to fear them, and then that buys you like 8 seconds or whatever to just do healing, and then it gives the tank a little bit more time to go and collect those things afterwards. The other way you can use Psychic Scream is as a sort of a pseudo interrupt. So certain things will be casting something, and then you can fear them, and then that will stop their cast. You should be aware that certain casts, if you interrupt them that way, like with Chastise or Fear, stuff like that, or a Knockback, as soon as they finish that CC, they'll start casting it again. Not all casts are that way. Some casts will actually just like stop the cast and they won't start casting again, so those are nice. Shackle Undead, so that's a really good CC we have, but it's only useful on undead enemies, so that's pretty niche of where you can get good use out of that. Shadow Word Death, so this is a DPS ability of ours, 17-second cooldown, and it actually deals damage back to us. So one thing is that it's worth using on targets that are below 20% health, because you get this damage increased by 150%. So it can be good for DPS if taking a little bit of damage yourself isn't going to hurt you that much. But only use it for DPS if the target's below 20% health. Otherwise, you're better off just using a smite. The other thing is that this can be really useful for your palms. So your palm, your Prayer of Mending, heals the next time you take damage, and so you can actually use Shadow Word Death to take damage to send that away. So say that you have palm on yourself and it's only got like 6 seconds left, and you're not going to take damage in those next 6 seconds, then all of its stacks that are left are just going to be wasted because it's going to fall off of you out of time. But if you were to Shadow Word Death, it'll take some damage and it'll send it somewhere else and refresh its like timer. So you can use Shadow Word Death to send falling palms to somebody else, which is useful. Shadow Word Pain, so that's our dot. This does more damage, quite a bit more damage than Smite. So you can see Smite only does 1700 damage, and this does 3300 damage. So as long as Shadow Word Pain is going to be on a target for like at least 8 seconds, it's worth using over Smite. So at the start of pulls, getting your dot on all of the targets that you can. I mean, obviously healing is your priority, so make sure people aren't getting low health during this process. But if their health is okay, try to spread your dot around on everything. And then Smite, yeah, that's just kind of our filler and our damage filler. It doesn't do much damage at all, and it's just a single target thing, but it can be useful to just spam when there's nothing else to use. It doesn't cost much mana at all, only 100 mana, so don't worry about it from a mana perspective. And then the other thing is that this Surge of Light, it's your healing spells and Smite. So Smite has a chance to give you one of these Surge of Light procs, which can be useful. So it's actually almost it's almost going to generate you mana in the long run by spamming Smite. not by much, but that 100 mana cost per cast will cancel out with sometimes proccing a free flash heal. Hymn is a really good cooldown in raids. It just like you start, I'll just pop it right now. You just start channeling. You can't move during it. I mean, if you can, but then it'll cancel the cast. It heals everybody that's within like maybe 40 yards or something like that. 40 yards, and then each heal increases all targets healing taken by 4% for 15 seconds stacking. So you can see that I have 5 stacks of it, so healing received is increased by 20%. It doesn't last very long, only that 15 seconds, and and you can see healing increased by 100% when not in raid. So when you're in a dungeon and you use this, it's actually getting like double the amount of healing. That being said, it's still not that great of a cooldown because of the channel, and oftentimes during dungeon fights where you take lots of damage, you might need to be moving, and it's also not that quick at healing people up. So even with the 100% bonus when not in raid, it's going to do about 12,000 healing, and yeah, it's doing it to everybody in the group, which is great, but Serenity is going to heal instantly for almost 15,000, and this is going to heal for 12,000 over 7 seconds. So if someone's getting low, it's way better to get a Serenity on them and then like maybe spam some heals around than him. But there are certain fights where you can get to know where like, okay, this is a good fight for him, and when we all take this raid damage, I know that him will be really good. So him is useful sometimes, but it's not nearly as good as some other healers. AoE heals, AoE heal cooldowns. Holy Fire, so this is our main damage ability. So it's going to be doing way more damage than Smite. Like you can see, it does 3,700 damage and then an extra 1,700 damage. So that comes out to about like 5,400 damage, whereas Smite was like 1,700 damage. So way better to be using Holy Fire, but it's a 10-second cooldown. So our damage priority is Holy Fire on cooldown as much as possible whenever it's off cooldown. If you don't have to be healing in that moment, then Holy Fire something. And then get your dot spread out. As long as the thing is going to live for like at least 10 seconds, then put your dot on it. And then from there, then it's just Smite spams. So those are our 3 damaging abilities besides Shadow Word Death, which you might use at when the target's below 20% health. But yeah, Holy Fire is our big damaging ability. So even if you don't have much time to heal during a dungeon, if you have a chance, get Holy Fire off on cooldown. And then if you have a chance, or even if you're moving and you don't really have an instant cast heal to use, then like put a Shadow Word Pain out. Holy Nova, this is pretty useless for the most part. It's just like you can spam it like this, and it does, what is it, like an 8-yard range, 12-yard range. It does healing and damage to everything in that range, but it's not much at all. It's like less than 500 healing and damage to everybody within the 12 yards. So if you have a pull with like a ton of enemies, like you have a double pull or a triple pull, and it's got like there's like 15 mobs in that area, then spamming this will probably actually be better damage than using like Holy Fire and your normal DPS cooldowns. That being said, during those pulls, you want to make sure people are staying alive. Like if you do a triple pull, healing is probably your priority more than just getting Holy Nova casts off. Holy Nova is mostly useful in like Torghast. Chastise, this is a really useful spell. So chastise the target for a bit of damage. Not the damage isn't really that relevant, and incapacitates them for 4 seconds. So you can take this censure talent, and that turns the incapacitate into a stun, because incapacitate, that's like a CC that will break from damage. So if you incapacitate them and then they take damage right after that from someone else, and they're not going to be stunned, it's going to ruin the stun right away. So you could take that if you want, but Shining Force is generally better. Now, the thing that to be aware of with Chastise is 2 things. One is that cooldown reduced by 4 seconds when you cast Smite. So it's a minute cooldown, but every time you cast Smite, its cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds. So you can actually get it on a fight where your healing isn't as important. You can actually get your Chastise up multiple times. And the way to use this ability is kind of as a way to cancel casts. So if there's a caster casting something, you can Chastise them and it'll stop their cast. As I mentioned earlier, there are certain casts where if you stop them, they will instantly start casting it again. So say it's some like healer that you use it on, so this thing's casting like a greater heal ability or something like that, and so you're like, well, I don't want it to greater heal, I don't want it to heal things up, so you chastise it, but then someone damages it right after, which they probably should, because you're probably using it on something that you're actively trying to kill, and then it immediately starts casting its greater heal again. So it can be useful just to like pause its heal, and that way it gives your group the opportunity to get an interrupt on it after. That being said, say the scenario where this thing is casting a greater heal. I chastise it to reset its heal, but right after I chastise it, my rogue, who's in my group, tries to kick. So my rogue just wasted his kick, and now this thing starts casting greater heal again, and my rogue doesn't have his kick up anymore. So you do have to be careful with that. That being said, there are certain mobs where they have casts that are uninterruptible, so they can be interrupted, and the only way to stop that cast is with like a stun, a knockback, or a CC like incapacitate. And oftentimes those abilities are abilities that won't recast. So in Halls of Atonement, there are a bunch of mobs called Houndmasters, and these things cast an ability called Loyal Beasts that buffs up their bears that they have with them. And you really don't want that cast to get off, because when those bears get buffed up, then your tank is just going to get destroyed. And that cast is an uninterruptible cast, so nobody can kick it. So somebody has to CC this thing when it starts casting it. So Chastise is really, really strong for those types of things. So as soon as it starts casting Loyal Beasts, I will Chastise it. It'll probably break the Chastise immediately from someone taking damage to it, or like it having a dot on it. But that's okay, because that ability won't be recast. So even though the thing is done its incapacity after the Chastise, it won't cast the Loyal Beast again. So getting to know which mobs and which casts you should be using Chastise on is quite important. So I've talked about all the healing spells. Yeah, so Symbol of Hope is, I guess, the last thing I'll talk about, and that is bolster the morale of raid members within 40 yards. They each recover 60 seconds of a cooldown of a major defensive ability and regain 80% of their missing mana over 4.2 seconds. So this is an ability, it's on a 5-minute cooldown. It's a channel similar to Divine Hymn, and over that time you regenerate some of your mana, and everybody in your group regenerates 60 seconds of a major defensive cooldown, which is quite nice. The main way that I would use this is to regenerate mana when I need to, but you have to realize at the bottom here it says and regain 8% of their missing mana, 18% of their missing mana. So it's not 18% of your mana. So if you're at like 80% mana and you use this, you're not going to get 18% of your mana back. You're going to get 18% of your missing mana, and you're missing 20% of your mana. So you're going to get 20% of 18%, which is like 3.6%. So you're not going to get much use out of it. So you only want to use this when you're like really low mana, like 20% mana or less. So it's more of like you're in the middle of a boss fight and you're getting really, really low on mana. Then pop Symbol of Hope if you have 4 seconds that you can spare for not healing, because you do have to channel it the whole time. The other way you could potentially use it is like after boss fights. You can assume that your tank probably used their major defensive cooldown during that boss fight. So then popping this will help them get that cooldown back up faster. But it is on a 5-minute cooldown, so it's not something you can like get used to using a lot. Although I guess in most dungeons you're going to be fighting a boss, like there's going to be 5 minutes between bosses, so I guess you could technically use this after every single boss fight just to help out your tank, and maybe your DPS, they might have popped some of their defenses. So yeah, that's something that I don't do much. I just save this for if I need like an oh shit I'm out of mana moment, but I could be using it maybe just after every single boss pull to get my group's defensive cooldowns back up faster. Yeah, I guess if you don't know what the mastery does, your direct healing spells heal for an additional 27% over 6 seconds. So if I just cast a flash heal on myself, I'll get this thing for 6 seconds. That gives me 2 ticks of a heal. So it just every time you heal something with a direct healing spell, you'll get a bit of extra healing on top of that. So you can kind of, it's mostly just a set and forget thing. Without even the set, you don't have to set it, but with like Serenity, for example, if I use Serenity, my ticks are 2,000, so I'm going to get 2 ticks of that, so that's going to be another 4,000 healing. So Serenity will do like 15,000 healing plus an extra 4,000 healing from the hot that gets left on there for 6 seconds. So that is nice. So you don't have to worry too much about topping things off. Like if you heal somebody and you get them to 90%, then you can just let your mastery do the rest of the work for you. Yeah, I guess that's all that I'll really talk about. Renew, not a cast that I really use much at all. But if you're moving around and there's damage going out and you don't have like if you're moving around and you have Palm off cooldown, then that's a great time to use your Palm, because that is an instant cast. If you're moving around and multiple people are hurt, then Circle of Healing would be a good cast to use. If neither of those are going to be very useful, then you can use Renew. Also, potentially, like if people are topped off and you know that group wide damage is coming soon, then you could just pre-renew them. And one other thing to realize with renew is that, and this is a case for like pretty much all HOTS on every class, is that like when I cast renew, it starts at, I think it starts at 15 seconds. Let's see, where's renew? Yeah, it starts at 15 seconds, but if you use it again, it goes to 20 seconds. So you could, like, if you really wanted to make sure people are hotted up, you could like double renew them, and that way they get 20 seconds of it. It's not good to do that from a mana standpoint, but it is something to be aware of. And then also you can use that to know that, like, if you want to reapply a renew to somebody, then feel free to reapply it once it's at 5 seconds or less. So you're not going to be like wasting it. Like if you reapply it at 5 seconds, then it's going to go from 15, or it's going to go from 5 to 20. So you still get that extra 15 seconds that the cast is. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's everything that really should be covered for a Holy Priest. I'm sure I missed some important things. And then obviously just kind of getting to know each of the dungeons and when certain spells are useful in those dungeons is really important. So I'll have videos that are like me doing a high key of every dungeon, hopefully, and explaining the things to be aware of during that dungeon and stuff. But I hope that this video helped explain Holy Priest a decent amount. And feel free to like ask me any questions if there's specific questions that you have in mind, and I'll try my best to answer them. And I'll definitely be honest about things that I'm not positive about. Like I said at the very start, that I'm not the best Holy Priest, and like I said, I don't even use the best Holy Priest talents. So I try to recognize things that I do that are maybe wrong. Like I would say that these two talents are wrong. I personally like them. It's personally how I like to play, but I know that I'm not reaching the ceiling of Holy Priest, because if to do that, I would need to be using these talents, for example. And then there's also things that like I might do because I think that it's right, but maybe I don't have that much confidence in that opinion that it's right. So I'll try, when I do give an answer about something, I'll try to address like how confident I am in that answer, whether I'm like really sure that that's the right thing to do, or whether I'm not that sure if it's the right thing to do, or maybe it's something that I am really sure that it's the right thing to do, but that other people disagree. So I'll recognize that like I could very well be wrong about this, but I feel quite strongly about it. So yeah, anyways, that's just a philosophy that I try to abide by with in my life. Anyways, thank you for checking out this video. I hope that it was informative, and I hope that I'm guessing it was pretty long. I actually have no idea how long it's taken. It feels like it's been pretty long, so I hope that it was at least like interesting and informative the whole way through. Hopefully you don't feel like you wasted your time.